Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. I have seen a leadership mismatch up close more than once in my career. At one time, I stepped into a leadership role during a period of change. I didn't have the formal language for it just yet, but I believed in a very simple idea. If you lift people up, create a shared purpose, make the work that they do mean something, and give them a goal that they could feel good in their bones, that would be great. But the problem was this. The leadership above me ran on a different operating system. Feedback traveled through pressure instead of coaching. Candor blurred into embarrassment. And the momentum that would build would then disappear in ways that were hard for me to confront. But most of all, I felt bad for the team. They are the ones that ended up being caught between two versions of what mattered. Two leadership philosophies running side by side, pulling in opposite directions. The impact on the team was real. And good people left. And eventually, so did I. I've also seen the same pattern show up in a completely different setting. An organization announced a bold direction: modernize, innovate, think forward. The language was inspiring. The slide decks were polished. The slogans, well, they were memorable. And then you talk to the people doing the work, and you'd hear the real incentives. The numbers that determine success were built for the old world, but the new direction threatened those numbers. So people did what rational people do. They protected what was being measured and rewarded. Same lesson, different environment. You see, when stated culture and actual incentives collide, guess what wins? Incentives. And they do every single time. If you ask most leaders to describe their company culture, most of them will point to something like an open floor plan, or they'll say we have a casual dress code. Maybe there's a ping-pong table in the break room. Maybe the mission statement framed in the lobby with words like integrity and excellence are there proudly. It is bold. It's there. It's up on the wall. And they smile because they say that's our culture. But to be clear, those things aren't culture. The frame on the wall with the words, the ping pong table, the open floor plan, that's not culture. Edgar Schein, the MIT professor who essentially founded organizational psychology, made this clear decades ago. Those visible elements, those are called artifacts. They are the paint on the house and not the foundation. The real culture lives underneath. Schein called them basic underlying assumptions, which are defined as the unwritten rules and implicit agreements that guide daily behavior. Things like results matter more than people or never bring the boss bad news. So here's the problem. If you don't manage this operating system, it will manage you. Some teams sustain high performance over time. And while others, they burn out and they stall. The difference comes down to a system I'd like to call the Leadership Flywheel. What is the Leadership Flywheel? Well, it has three components. The first component is the organization's leadership philosophy. What gets the flywheel spinning? Your purpose, your approach, and how you show up and how your team experiences you. Number two, engagement inputs. The conditions you create for your team, such as psychological safety and meaningfulness and the resources to do the work. Those are engagement inputs. And finally, if you get number 1 and number 2 right, what does the output look like? Well, that's called radical engagement. When you combine the right leadership philosophy with appropriate engagement inputs, the result is this radical engagement. This is the manifestation of the full investment of physical, mental, and emotional energy. And when the flywheel spins, it builds momentum. Culture becomes a safety net, not a minefield, and people bring their whole selves to work because the environment makes that possible. But when it stalls, you get what I experienced in that first organization. You get whiplash, you get confusion, and eventual departure of good people. Or what I saw in the second organization, rational resistance to a direction that penalized people expected to execute. Your leadership philosophy is the initial force. It determines whether the flywheel accelerates or grinds to a halt. Robert Greenleaf, who coined the term servant leadership that we have talked about here on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab, he coined that back in 1970. And he said it starts with the natural desire to serve, not the other way around. The job of a servant leader is to, in fact, serve their team. To be clear, because there is confusion about this, servant leadership isn't about letting others walk all over you. It's about actively removing obstacles for your team. When you lead with this intent, you signal that your goal is to help them succeed. Your job is to help the team. And that signal matters. People notice what you as a leader prioritize. They notice if your words match your actions. And they notice if you build them up or if you tear them down. In that first organization I talked about, I was trying to create shared purpose, a rally cry, a public recognition, a sense that we're building something beautiful together. But when the leader above signals something different, the team doesn't know which signal to follow, which creates confusion. William Kahn, who developed the concept of employee engagement, identified 3 psychological conditions people need to invest in their work fully. The first one is psychological meaningfulness. That basically means your team is asking themselves, does it matter if I bring my full self to work or not? If the answer is unclear, they'll hold back. Team members need to feel that investing themselves is worthwhile, that the work connects to something larger than the task itself. If the direction threatens the numbers they're evaluated on, they're going to protect the numbers. So number 2 is psychological safety. The team's going to ask, is it safe to be myself here? In other words, can they show who they really are without risking their status or their career? Can they try something and fail at it and not be punished for it? Because if the answer is no, well, then they're going to perform a version of themselves that feels safe. And that's not engagement, friends. That's survival. If psychological safety doesn't exist, and if there is public criticism and undermining dressed up as feedback, well, then people quickly learn that visibility is dangerous. Number 3 is psychological availability. The team's going to ask, do I have the resources to do this? In other words, if distractions or politics or burnout wear them out, they can't engage, right? The tank is empty. You can have all the purpose and safety in the world, but if people are running on fumes, well, the flywheel stalls, and that's on you. Availability isn't just about time and energy, it is about mental bandwidth. And when people are spending their cognitive resources navigating conflicting signals, internal politics from leadership among other people, well, then they have nothing left for the actual work. And the output? Well, when all 3 conditions are met, the flywheel spins. The output is engagement, but not the watered down version. Engagement is when someone fully invests their best self in their work, using their physical, their mental, and emotional energy simultaneously. They're present. They're authentic. They have their own voice, and man, it feels good. And this isn't about effort alone. Effort without presence, that's just grinding. Engagement, though, that's showing up completely. I've seen what this looks like when it works, and it's awesome. Teams that move fast because trust is high. People who take ownership because they know their contributions really do matter. And leaders who can be honest because the environment allows it. You've done that as a leader. And I've also seen what happens when it doesn't. I've been a part of all of them. So how do you know whether or not you're spinning or you're stalling? Schein gave us the roadmap here too. He identified what he called embedding mechanisms. That's the specific ways that leaders teach their organizations what truly matters. So if you want to audit your own leadership, here's what I'm going to ask you to do this week. Pay attention to 3 signals. The first signal is what you measure and control. So this is really your strongest signal. What you focus on most shows your team what you truly value. So questions that you can ask yourself are things like, are you consistently monitoring the metrics that actually matter? Do those metrics reflect the values you claim to hold? And how often do you reinforce those values in team meetings? Because there can't be a gap between what leadership says and what is being measured that creates chaos and confusion. Signal number 2, how you react to critical incidents. This is really important. When the server crashes or a deadline is missed, what is your immediate emotional reaction? I need you to think about this, because if your first words are, whose fault is this? You've just taught your team that mistakes are fatal. You've destroyed psychological safety in seconds. But if your first words are, what can we learn from this? Well, you just taught resilience. And as we've discussed here on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab before, your team watches everything. They remember the crisis moments more than the calm ones. They remember who got blamed and they remember who got protected. They remember whether you practiced what you preached when it was hard. In that first organization, critical incidents were opportunities for public punishment. Everyone learned fast. Don't be visible. Don't take risks. Don't be the one holding the problem when leadership walks in the door. Okay, signal number 3, who you reward. So this is the one that kills most teams. Who gets the promotion? Who gets the status? Who gets the visibility? So we say that we value teamwork, but then you see organizations that promote the toxic high performer. You know that person. They're in every organization. They bring the revenue, but they make everyone else in the room miserable. If you promote that person, you're telling the entire organization that performance theater matters more than being a decent human. You've signaled that your values are in fact negotiable. And everyone notices. Your culture is at odds with your actions. And so the inverse is also true. When you reward people who deliver results and lift others up, you teach the organization that both matter. When you protect people who take smart risks that don't pan out, you teach the organization that learning is valued. But the point here, no matter what, is this. How you define your reward decisions is in fact the loudest signal, louder than any mission statement that's hanging on the wall. It's louder than any all-hands speech that you can never give. Culture is not static. As your organization grows, it will naturally split into subcultures. Your engineers will develop one set of assumptions and your sales team another, and that's normal. Your job as a leader is to be the architect. You have to see these assumptions and manage them. You have to create alignment across groups while respecting what makes each one work. And as we have also discussed here before on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab, being a decent human, that is not a soft skill. It is a strategic advantage. And as we learned here today, it's the input that spins the leadership flywheel. And if the leadership flywheel isn't spinning, it's not because your people are broken. It's because the operating system needs an upgrade. I'd really want you to this week to stop looking at the artifacts. Take a look at your assumptions. Go inward and audit what you measure. List the metrics you discuss most frequently and compare them to the values that you claim. Where's the gap? And recall your last crisis. What was your first reaction? Was it blame or was it learn? What did your team see? Review your last 3 promotions. Did you reward results only or results plus how they were achieved? And number 4, ask your team directly. What do we actually value here based on what gets rewarded? And then listen, because what they say, well, that's your operating system. That's what's really running underneath the posters and the mission statements and the town halls. And then see whether or not it's time for an upgrade. Because remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.